Before we begin, two messages. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. What mobile platform do companies like eBay, NBC Universal, the Los Angeles Times, Razorfish, and PayPal use to build their cross-platform native applications? Titanium by Appcelerator. They aren't alone. There are now over 25,000 apps deployed by Appcelerator, which has been called the Rosetta Stone of app development. And you can start now for free. Just go to www.appcelerator.com for more information. Hello everybody, welcome to Untether.tv. This is that place you come to so often, and I'm so appreciative, but it's the place you come to every single day to find out how some of these entrepreneurs are building, changing, manipulating, moving the yardstick of the mobile industry, the mobile space. And this is a really interesting time. I've gone back and I've interviewed a couple of people a couple of times, one or two, to see how things are going. Maybe a year later, I can remember a couple of them that I've done 2 times, but never thrice, never 3 times on Untethered until this episode. Granted, the second time we did it was only a 5-minute one because I had a full crew and we were in Toronto. It was a live interview. But this is my 3rd time sitting down with Ken Seto, who is the co-founder and CEO of Massive Damage, Inc. Now, these guys are Ken and his brother. Were also the minds behind iMockups with their company Endloop. So we got a lot to talk about. It's been a year since we've sat down and caught up. And Ken, I welcome you to the show again, man. You know, I think 200 or 322 more episodes, and we'll be equal.
Hi, Rob. Thanks. I'm happy to be back.
Well, it's wicked. I mean, I love this because, you know, what you've done in a year is exactly what this industry has kind of gone through. It's a tumultuous time. It's, you know, stupid word, dumb word, I hate using it, but pivots everywhere. But let's start. When we last talked, you were running Endloop,
Yep.
and you had... it was around the time, so it was a month after the iPad was launched. iMockups was the rage, which was the ability to kind of obviously mock up applications and on your iPad. But then when I met you in the fall in Toronto, you seem to be on that same path, kind of connected later on. It's Massive Damage. Zombies are flying everywhere, location-based games. Fill in some of this gap.
Well, since we last talked, I guess, we started through an incubator program in Montreal called Year One Labs. How that started, basically, they kind of recruited us. They approached us with the idea of building something completely different and working on something bigger than, I guess, what we were doing at Endloop. We were kind of doing a mishmash of service work and working on small little apps. Depends on how small you think iMockups is. Like it is still a fairly small app in the sense that it doesn't really scale. Mm-hmm. There's no building an entire business around it. So that was the enticing thing. I wanted to step back and kind of take a look at what we've done and with Endloop and where we were with that company, and the idea of starting something completely new. Going through the incubator process, working with those advisors and mentors at UN Labs who were just amazing, by the way. Sadly, UN Labs is not doing another year, as far as I know, at least not in the immediate sense.
Right.
But some really cool stuff coming out of there this year. Well, you know, I guess including us, but your Local Mind, I've heard of. That was
I interviewed those guys, yeah.
Yeah, and great. Another great startup called High Score House is coming out, and I think, you know, we're all going to have. When is this going to air? Is this going to air like this week?
It'll be next week.
Next week. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's safe to say that I'll have announced my funding by then, so I can announce it here.
Okay.
We basically raised an angel round of about $320,000.
Nice job.
I just closed that this summer, so I think High Score House is on their way to closing around. I hope. I heard they're working their butt off there, and obviously Local Mind raised. So that's 3 for 5 companies from Year One Labs.
It's pretty successful. And are all three, as I'm not, I know Local Mind, but is the other company Total High Scores? What was it called?
High Score House.
High Score House. Is that a mobile company as well?
Of I guess rewarding kids in your household for doing chores and activities.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I need that, boy. I need that right now. Holy cow.
Yeah, you should look it up. It's pretty sweet.
So, I mean, you packed up from Toronto and moved to Montreal?
Basically, we traveled back and forth for the whole time because we have families back here and our network is back here. So, and we were still, partially involved with Enloop for a good chunk of it as well. So we were trying to do a kind of a lot of everything. So we traveled back and forth from Montreal and Toronto for a good 6 months.
Oh my God! And that's not an easy commute.
Yeah, no, but the Via train allowed us to do a lot of the work on there, and or sleep, or catch up on sleep. That worked too.
Yeah, come on, Ken. You don't have to lie to me. You don't sleep.
I'm trying to get more sleep lately, but I'm not very good at it. This is a skill I'm going to have to learn.
Well, I'm so. When we last talked, I mean, I remember you talking about games. I remember you talking about games, and then you came out with a game. I mean, chicken balls. But I want to, before we go there, let's talk about iMockups, because that was really the last time we had an in-depth conversation about what you were doing and the success that you had. I mean, I remember the stories you told me about, submitting it being live, and not even owning an iPad because you're in Canada and having to race down to make sure that it worked on an iPad, right? To go down and stand in line. So a lot has happened in the 18 months since the iPad was released. So how do you get from iMockups? Was it just you realize that this is not a business, but you're building that? It's successful, right? You made money off it.
We've my current guess is I think we've probably made about $350,000 from that product, which is pretty good, like for an app, and in all terms of the word, it's quite successful. But I can't really, like I said, I'm not able to build a large business off of that. Like we had, it funded the development of other stuff like chicken balls, and it funded basically growing the company Enloop into a larger company. But we still had to do a lot of client work to keep the cash flow going. So it just didn't feel like there was a lot of focus at Enloop when we last spoke. We were doing stuff, but nothing was going towards any particular direction. So we took that opportunity to do the incubator route because I felt like I did need some time with advisors and kind of meet people who have been very successful in building businesses and building my network and expanding my, I guess, my roster of mentors and people I can call upon for advice. And it did exactly that. Like I can barely describe how much I felt like I've learned since I started that process. It's been pretty mind blowing.
Well, it's very interesting because a lot of people would look at iMockups and the ability to, generate that kind of revenue, the press that you did get, and roll that into some momentum. But boy, was it a difficult decision for you to say, listen, we're kind of floating here. We don't want to do client work, although it can be lucrative. We don't want to do client work. We want to build our own product. Let's take a step back and let's do this thing. Like, was that a difficult decision to kind of pull back and say, look, nice try, but let's try something new?
Yeah, it was basically a really hard decision. Around October, late September, we really had to sit ourselves down and really understand what we were trying to get, why we were thinking of doing what we're going to do, go to Montreal and, do that amount of traveling, getting, being away from Toronto and Loop and kind of leaving that, in the hands of someone else to take care of for a little while. And yeah, that was very, very difficult. But in the end, I think me and Gary had gotten to our limited level of success at that point because we took risks and we went with our gut and we went with how we felt. You have to jump to grab at some of those opportunities sometimes, and it just felt like it felt right.
What was it about that?
Painful, but right.
What's that?
It was painful, but right.
But what was it that felt so right about it? Like, I'm really interested in this because I see a lot of entrepreneurs holding on to ideas, and the ideas are not businesses; they're ideas, right? And or they've got a product and they're exploiting, one piece of the market, but it's heavy lifting, and they're doing the heavy lifting, and it's not materializing. So, what was it that? How did you know it was right when you're looking at this? You got a product that's generating $350,000. It's a niche product, but still, as the market grows, it's going to grow with the market. But it's allowed you to fund other products. But why couldn't you have just continued? Why couldn't you have done massive damage inside of Enloop?
Well, I think at that time we had some ideas, but we didn't really have the idea yet, and we were having a very difficult time getting the level of focus we needed to work on a project of this scale.
Because of customer work, because of client work.
Yeah, customer work and just
support.
Keeping up with supporting the existing apps. It was just there's so many little things to do within the scope of how Enloop was being run back then that it might have been just something on our part we didn't never quite figured out the right formula for it back then. So it felt like a good opportunity to really focus on one single idea and product, and that's kind of how it worked out. Basically, when we were up there, we did nothing but work, and there was it felt silly to do anything else other than work because you're making that trek all the way up there to be in Montreal, and it's a great city and all, but I'm not sure if I saw much of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I talked to Bo Ha from Locomind, and said the same thing, that that experience certainly opened his eyes, and these guys were from San Diego and decided to come up to Montreal for Year One Labs because of the relationships. What's that?
They came from San Diego to Montreal winter.
I know somebody lied to him for sure, right? So you make the trek, you do this, you say, listen, we're going to change this up. We don't know what we want to do, but we know that what we're doing isn't going to materialize in a company the size of which we want to operate, you and your bro. So you pack up and you head down to Montreal.
Yep.
And head up to Montreal, and then what happens? Like, do you come there with some ideas? You got the money. You come up there with some ideas.
Bouncing around, and we settled on the idea of a location-based game of some sort. And we start off with alien invasion. We had all sorts of crazy ideas.
But you knew it was going to be a location-based game.
Yes, we settled on the idea that it was going to be a location-based game, and it was going to be a different type of location-based game than what's out there right now.
Okay, so why location-based game?
Personally speaking, I think location-based games is a trend that it did start with, obviously Foursquare and Scavenger. Yeah. But I don't think that is the end result. I don't think that's the where location-based start and end. I think we're going to see a lot more interesting uses of a location for gaming purposes. I think a lot of the earlier games have been less game and more just a thin layer of gamification on top of walking around the city and the neato idea that this phone actually has a GPS. It's
kind of like skill testing questions, right? Right. That's what location-based gaming has been.
Yeah, and basically it's an exercise in saying, hey, your iPhone has a GPS. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So that's all neat. It's like, hey, your phone can display graphics. That's cool, but that's not the end result. So I think there's a lot more to be explored, and we're definitely aiming to continue exploring in that territory. We've done some pretty interesting things with Please Stay Calm, our first game from Massive Damage, that really focuses on, strangely enough, on location, but we don't have a map in the game at all.
Well, so what makes it so different than I've spent some time with some guys, even here in Ottawa. Spy MI is a location-based game. It's a spy game. It's more like Planetfall, if you're old enough to remember that from the Commodore 64 days, right? Text-based with a little bit of graphic, but Planetfall, that just dated me, boy. But what makes yours so different?
Well, we focus basically on the game first. We built the game using cardboard. Sorry, using at Year One Labs. So we spent a few months playing and making a board game version of our game, which some people were really jealous of. That's all we did all day.
So, I
I
lost you there for a second, Ken. So you built your prototype as a board game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got up. So somebody gave you $50,000, and you hike up to Montreal and you start cutting out cardboard.
Well, we use existing units from other board games. We started buying up board games and playing the crap out of them.
It's camp.
Yeah. Well, the thing with board games is interesting is in a lot of the board games you see in the stores, especially the more complicated ones, the gameplay is really solid.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys can't release patches for their board games.
I know, it's so wicked.
These guys take years to nail the gameplay and the mechanics of their games. So that's kind of a secret.
I love it.
I just gave game designers out there, look at the board games, because those guys have nailed their mechanics.
So you bought all these games. Was there one that you kind of resonated with? Like, I'm a Risk guy. I love Risk, but...
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say there's any particular one we resonated with. I mean, we bought a couple of niche games like Arkham Asylum. Yeah. Sorry, not Arkham Asylum, Arkham Horror, and Last Night on Earth. There was a zombie game. We even bought a Battlestar Galactica game where it was a kind of a co-op game with a spy element to it. So it was pretty interesting. There's a lot of interesting games out there that are not traditional, all for me gameplay. A lot of co-op. We were focusing on the idea of cooperative gameplay. So
you bought a bunch of these games. How cool is that? And, I mean, what a great tip for those of you guys who are building games. I mean, you know, it's so simple. It's right in front of you. So you bought a bunch of the games you play. You love the mechanics of board games. I love that quote. I love that quote that you can't patch a board game. It's just so great. So great.
So yeah.
So then what happens?
Well, so we got the board game. We started playing around with the concept, and we got to a point where, you know, it wasn't super polished. It was just like, but it felt like, yeah, I could see this being an iPhone game and working. And we started thinking about how we wanted to make the best use of location. And when I say location, I don't necessarily mean latitude, longitude. This is why we don't have a map. We may yet have a map later. I don't want to never say never for certain functions. But right now, it's all focused on the idea that you are in your office or you're in the Starbucks, you know, the street down from your office. And that's what's really important, that you're in those venues and not, you know, at a certain street corner coordinate.
Right. Right.
And looking at other games that people play, most people play games from their office or from their home or whenever they're at a pause somewhere.
Yep.
So and we thought it more natural for us to build a game where it doesn't really require you to move around the city. Like it does reward you for doing certain things in proximity to other locations, and so you can move around and get some reward for that. But it's not a requirement. We made sure that, you know,
it's not a scavenger hunt, basically. Right?
Yeah, any gamer can just sit in their office and play all day if they want to, and not suffer because of it.
No, that's an interesting thing, because you said it right at the beginning there that most people play who play games on their mobile device spend, you know, it's gap time, right? It's like I'm standing in line, I'll throw on a game, or I'm sitting at Starbucks waiting for somebody, I'll throw on a game. Like, do you want people to start playing your game as a destination game? Is that the way that you see this?
I'm not sure what you mean about destination game.
Like it's like I'm going to sit down and I'm going to play.
We found actually most people play our game in short spurts. Yeah. So they'll play, you know, they'll be at Starbucks waiting for a coffee, and they'll kill a few zombies while they're waiting.
Okay, I love it. Just zombies. I mean, as an aside, I was actually driving home from Toronto last week, and my son just kind of looked up at me, and he's in the back. He's 4.5 years old. He said, "Dad, I need you to go and download a zombie game." I don't know, he's 4.5. Like,
right.
Zombie games are cool with 4.5-year-olds. They just can't play them. But anyway, so but it's been stuck in my head since then, and I wonder how he came up with that. But so your game is kind of location agnostic, but it allows you to check in, or it allows you to be in a location and collect some kind of reward as well. So it's the best of both worlds.
I would say each location is treated as a, I guess, an old school gamer terms, like a little mini dungeon. So you go into your Starbucks and you can collect supplies. You can hunt down zombies in that area nearby Starbucks. Sometimes a locked room appears that you can use a lockpick to get into to get better supplies. We allow you to create an outpost. So it's almost like a little mini game of Monopoly on top of the real world. So you can build an outpost that generates supplies or money for you, and you can designate any location as your safe house. So you can have one safe house. And the neat thing about our game is safe houses, they're meant to be used as a way to form teams, but in a very ad hoc, simple manner. So, you create a safe house at your office. Let's say you work at Shopify. It's an Ottawa startup.
Mm-hmm.
So Shopify actually has a 13-person safe house in the game right now.
Seriously?
So they have 13 players who are using Shopify as a safe house.
And that's just kind of a place to hide?
No, it's a place that you upgrade, and by upgrading your safe house, it gives you bonuses for playing the game nearby that safe house. So we have a lot of interesting mechanics that, I can really go deep into, but we'd bore everybody to death. So, but the hardcore gamers, they like the fact that there's an extra level of depth there that can be discovered if you play it and you figure it out.
So, I mean, it sounds like a lot of thought went into this. A start, a middle, and an end. Obviously influenced by the fact that you looked at board games, and there has to be an end and a logical end. Mm-hmm. But do you worry that that building a game like this, the complexity of building a game like this will show through? Like, I've seen some pretty complicated games where it's like, I'm not going to play that because the learning curve is too high. How do you keep it? How do you keep it engaging enough and simple enough, yet that underlying piece is very complex?
Yeah, that's something we're still actually working on. I mean, if you look at the screenshots for a game, some of the screens are quite busy. But then if you look at any particular screenshot from Farmville, it's quite busy.
Yeah,
there's a lot of junk floating around the outside of your main viewing area, and that has to do with, I think, with the design aesthetic of social games, where you're always trying to display to the player stuff that incentivizes them to do things, to go into activities, where the design of an app is to keep things as simple as possible. So you don't get in the way of the person doing their task. You make sure the options show up when it's best to show up, rather than being in your face all the time. In the design of these kind of games, it's almost better if you have everything on the screen all at once, all the time, so that people know that, oh, I can go do this now. Oh, I'm done that. Oh, I can go do this now. It's really bizarre for me as a user interface that my background's user experience design, and I basically had to do the complete opposite of what I would normally do. It's a whole different discipline, designing this kind of game.
So, did you think about building this strictly for iOS or for the iPhone? I mean, was there a battle between this and iPad?
Well, for the iPad, the numbers are not really there. Like, there's still, let's say, I forget what the numbers are now. Let's say there's 35 million iPads out there. There's still 150 million iPhones plus iPod touches. So it's, for us, we had to focus on the phone first. It's also the most mobile of those devices. Yeah.
And GPS.
We will probably have an iPad version out at some point, but I'd rather have an Android version out first.
Interesting. We'll come back to that. I'm going to make a note of Android. We won't. I don't know if we should talk about BlackBerry. I'll put that in there as well. Hey. So, okay, you've got the concept down. You've got the board game. You've played all these games. You're looking at this. You say it's going to be zombies. It's going to be a location-based game. So you start coding. When was this? What was
we
that
started
process?
Coding probably about the very beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've just launched it kind of end of summer.
Yeah. Last Thursday we launched it in Canada.
And was that the first place you launched it? This is kind of the test bed?
Yes. So basically, we did a beta test throughout the summer.
Yep.
We had a bunch of testers from Toronto and Montreal hammering away at it. But, we only had maybe about 50 players in beta just because, Apple only allows you about 99 devices to test things on. So it was a little tricky getting more people on. And so that gives you a lot of testing, but it's really hard for this type of game, which is mostly online. Our game talks to the server constantly.
Yeah.
So we definitely needed the extra numbers, and we weren't ready to get crushed by everybody on the App Store downloading our game until we kind of figured out that side of things in Canada.
So you beta test in Canada. Our population is less than California, right? So
yeah.
So you walk through that process. Walk me through that process from the time that you come up with the concept of the game. You start coding in January. You go through that. Through the winter, you come out with a beta. Is that how it worked? Through the summer, you got a beta, and then you decide you're ready to go.
Yeah, basically, it took a long time to build this game out because it is so. The UI was tricky. The back end was tricky. There was nothing easy about building this type of game. We're basically building
a world.
At its very basic core, it is a Mafia Wars style game, based on that Zynga game, Mafia Wars. In terms of the way, the basic structure of playing a game, but it's at the same time it's quite different. We've added a lot to that style of gameplay, whereas there's a lot of publishers out there that basically just kind of skin vampires on top of Mafia Wars, or they skin World War II on top of Mafia Wars, and good on them, it works and they're being successful. But
that's what Zynga did, didn't they? Just put Mafia guys on top of farmers, pretty much, right? Same engine.
Yeah. But I don't know if it's just because I'm a masochist or what, but we decided we want to kind of elevate this genre game to a different level. So,
Ken, I want to stop on that note. So remember what you're going to say next, because I see this a lot in the mobile space, which is like the quickest route to revenue, or the least amount of work. And everybody talks about open APIs and leveraging other people's data and bringing it into mine, and then building a layer on top of that. And I always look at those and say, it's not really fundable. If Foursquare decided to close down their data feed, or if limiting the data feed, or Twitter said, we're going to charge you for that, your company crumbles, right? So I applaud the fact that you're not crazy. I think that what you did, building from the ground up, is, listen, it's IP. You own that. There's nobody that's going to pull that out and say, like, sorry, we've changed our user agreement, and this is what it now is. Because I was worried about that. People are very friendly today, but that can change on a dime, and you don't want to be susceptible to that. Did that kind of thinking go through your head, or was it just like, look, we're masochists?
Oh, we're definitely we're still dependent on Foursquare right now.
Yeah, location, sure.
Use their feed for location, but there is a way to swap that out and use somebody else's as a location feed, like Simple Geo and other services out there.
Open source guys, or guys that are giving it away.
Yeah. Right now, it's useful to hook onto Foursquare because it's got the most check-ins, and we have a pretty good relationship with the Foursquare guys, and they're pretty happy to see us doing something really neat with their API. So far so good. As there's definitely is a risk there to hinging ourselves on third-party API, as much as we do right now.
Yeah. But at some point, it's it's part of the gameplay. But I'm even talking about the core engine, the gaming engine. Listen, you don't want to build that on somebody else's technology, because that's really, you raised a round, and part of that round is because you own some intellectual property around this game and this gaming engine, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's our game engine, the platform we're building that can be used to create more games easily.
Yep.
The funny thing is that the hardest thing for us to do was actually just design the game, because while we took that basic Mafia Wars style structure to the gameplay, we've changed it so much that we can't rely on looking at other people's games as a way to, those guys are doing this, we should just do this. Yeah. At some point we forked off so far off that we really had to do our own design and testing and all of our own mechanics, so that it was very tricky. Well, it still is tricky. We're still working on it. The UI that you see in the screenshots as of today, I would say that's probably the 10th or 11th complete revision of the UI for the game.
What an effort.
Yeah, it's pretty painful going through. And I'm saying when I say 10th or 11th revision, it's not one screen. I'm talking the whole app from beginning to end, revised that many times. So
I mean, the obvious question that I have to ask now is I know there's in-app purchases, and talk about the revenue model for this, because this is an effort, and you're giving away the base game, at least in Canada, for free. Freemium model, obviously, with in-app purchases, and which is obviously the smart way to do it. But talk about that. I mean, I saw a little bit of monetization in there where I can spend $5 and get universal chat, or I can have discussions. So, I mean, obviously you're innovating not only in the gameplay, but you've also got to innovate on how you can make revenue, make money out of this.
Yeah, so the freemium model is definitely becoming the standard now, because if you don't have it free, that just gives you roadblocks to user acquisition. So did you find that with your other products? Like when you were out pushing out iMockups, that was a for pay app. Yeah, with productivity apps, it's a little easier to do straightforward paid app. The problem with the straightforward paid app is iMockups is now, I think, $6.99. It was $10. We lowered the price since. Once you pay that $6, there's an expectation for unlimited updates, support, and never have to pay another cent again.
Yep. Because
that would be just insulting to ask for more money after that point.
Yeah. After spending $10 on something that you use every day.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's
so with a freemium model, at least you know that you are giving a core amount of gameplay or a core value for free, and if the people stick around for long enough and they see new content and new features, there's still opportunities to get a little bit more money from them for these new features and new content.
Okay. Would you have done something similar like that to iMockups in hindsight?
It's a
Could
little
you have done it?
Productivity apps. You really have to know where to kind of put that paid gate, I guess, as it were. And if you put it the wrong place, you annoy everybody. If you put it too far in, then nobody's going to bother paying you any money.
Yeah.
And with productivity apps, it's really difficult to find that line.
So you're pretty satisfied with iMockups just as a traditional piece of software.
Yeah, I think that the Enloop team now, if they were to pursue iMockups, the continued development on it, at some point they'll probably say, okay, iMockups 1 is complete, as much as it can for the product that we're offering. We can start working on iMockups 2.
Yeah,
and if you've taken long enough between that, hopefully the users will understand that you're rewriting the whole thing, you're adding a whole bunch of new features. It's a different product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
without much for a productivity app when you say, here's the iMockups 2, $9.99 again. Like that's.
Well, I think Apple does that, and when you buy an operating system, you don't pay full price, but $30 for the new operating system. Mm-hmm. And I think I just my editing software that I ScreenFlow is what I use here, and they just went up a version and charged me $30.
Right.
Right. So, and I'm perfectly fine because I use it every day, obviously, but then again, I don't mind spending a little bit of money on supporting the software development community.
Right.
I'm not a prick, right?
Right.
So, all right. So I totally took us off track, but so when you talk about monetizing this or turning this into revenue, I mean, the whole idea here is that this is a game that will scale, right? So it's not like iMockups where you have a limited audience. It could be a large audience. $350,000 and growing is not. It's nothing to. I mean, that's great. That's a good revenue base for a product. So you want it to build something that scales, and scales not only in use and reach, but in revenue. So that's freemium. you give away the base product for free, and then what do you start charging, or have you figured that out yet?
Well, we're still figuring that out, but I think what we have right now is a pretty good start. Basically, people can play the game. They don't have to pay. They don't have to pay any money. We have a incentivized video ads that allow people to earn virtual currency for watching a 10-second video.
Oh, wicked! So advertising
works pretty well. So people who are not willing to pay in-app purchase, they can watch a few videos and earn their daily credits, as it were, and spend that on their upgrading their chainsaw and so forth and so forth.
And those are ads, like people will pay you for ads?
Yeah, basically we'll get a little bit on from the ad provider. What's nice about this is it's not in your face. Basically, it's just a little button in the corner on the black market screen. It says earn free credits. You click that, and it says watch this video for 1 credit. Yeah. And you just tap watch, and 10 seconds later you're done, and you have a bit more money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it, and you'll use a standard ad provider for that, like an AdMob or an InMobi or something like that.
Flurry.
Flurry. Okay. All right. And so that's one way to monetize. How else do you do it?
Well, I purchase bundles. So where you can purchase credits in bulk.
Okay.
$99.99 if you want a bajillion credits.
A bajillion credits, literally?
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually 2,000, but it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so you buy that to advance yourself in the game without to speed up your advancement in the game.
We had to design the game carefully so that even people who bought a lot of credits at one time, they don't actually skip any content of the game. It just makes the fighting a little easier, a little faster, and they can play the game faster instead of waiting for their energy to refill. They can just buy an energy drink and refresh. But they still have to kill just as many zombies as your neighbor. They just might be, your neighbor might be a little slower at killing them because he doesn't have the souped up chainsaw. He only has a hedge trimmer.
Love it. I'm definitely not giving this game to my kids. So, I mean, and you think that, I mean, do you have any kind of revenue expectations that you've set against this? Like, do you know what a game like this will generate? Do you have any ideas? What do you hope?
I see numbers from, I guess, industry reports from places like Flurry, and I've seen numbers for how Facebook social games pay out. They actually pay a lot less than mobile social games. So games on mobile tend to pay way more. I think it's just the audience, people who can afford to have an iPhone and are spending money on apps are not so afraid to hit the buy button. It doesn't really stress them out to buy a few in-app purchases. So it's great. Like it's a great platform for a freemium game. So I did do some projections, but I basically have to revise them from day one. I'll have to revise them again once we launch in the US because it's just they're just projections. Like I'm putting out a metrics report from the first 3 days of the Canadian launch. I'm going to put that out probably it'll be out the time this thing airs. It's called 72 hours later. It'll be my this is a fun little infographic that I'm putting out.
Very cool. And you're gonna divulge that information?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the first 3 days, and I just wanted to get people a sense of what a launch in Canada is like with a little bit of press. We didn't get featured by Apple or anything, but I think we did okay. And I can tell you now that the initial average revenue per user is coming out at about $8.
Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
$8?
Yep.
Man. Well, I was going to ask you how many users you have, but that will give away everything, wouldn't it?
Well, we have that's why it's called 72 hours later. So it's only the first 3 days of data.
Yeah.
And we had about 1,300 downloads.
Yeah.
And about 530 daily active users for those first 3 days.
Wow.
So pretty cool.
So almost like just under, like that's probably about 40% daily active.
About 33%, 35% ish. Okay. Yeah, around there. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could do math, I probably wouldn't be hosting a web TV show, right?
Yeah, I'm not even sure if my math is correct, but sounds good.
So I mean, and based on metrics, you think that that's a good rate. It's good enough to satisfy you that in 3 days, 1,300 downloads, 530 active daily users, $8 average users. $8 is the average that people spend on this
Per month. Yeah, that's $8 per month.
per month. Yeah. So you're feeling comfortable with this now.
Well, if it keeps up like this, I'll be very happy. I really don't know. We're working on things like our user retention. We're losing some users on the tutorial levels. There's a lot of weird areas where some people are just kind of dropping off, and we're trying to find out why, whether it's our design fault or this is just the nature of how these things work. So there's a lot of learning going on right now. Basically, that's what we're spending our time. In Canada, we haven't launched anywhere else because we just want to spend this extra month just learning on where people are dropping off and not why they're not playing the game.
Well, it's interesting because one of my questions was how long do you anticipate that each average user? So if they're churning out $8 a month, how long do you think that they commit to a game like this?
I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of people who are playing for more than 30 minutes at a time. Let's say out of our active users, I think about 25% of them have had sessions during the day that were longer than, say, 20 minutes.
Unbelievable.
I would say 2/3 are probably within the 1 minute to 5 minute level. Like our median session length is about 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
But people are averaging around 5 sessions a day, which is pretty cool.
5 times 2.5 minutes.
Yes. So that means they keep coming back, which is awesome.
So I mean, when you measure that like that, it's pretty. It probably rivals email. When you start to think about this or social networking, you're doing that in 10-second increments, but you're doing it every minute or every bunch of minutes. But I have a hard time quantifying if that's good. It sounds good because I look at some of the statistics and my own use in games on the mobile device, and I'm not spending 10 or 12 or 30 minutes a day playing engaged in this. And you're in the industry, so when you talk about this, what do you think that the reaction is going to be for the first 72 hours that you when you push this out?
I don't know. I mean, the numbers are I think they're pretty good for what we have. They're obviously just 3 days worth of numbers, so it's definitely skewed towards early adopters.
Yeah.
So I will see them leveling out a little later on, but
how do you keep that momentum?
Not that far off the average I'm seeing from Flurry reports.
Okay. But how do you keep that momentum? I think that's the big challenge, right? Is that you've put kind of your heart and soul. We're in month 9 of the year, right?
Yep.
Of your development cycle, basically.
Yep.
It's been a year since you kind of you said, listen, we're not happy, but we need something that's much bigger than where we're at. But how do you keep this momentum after all this work? How do you keep this thing top of mind, pushing out, doing 1 million, 2 million, 3 million downloads?
Well, I think what's nice about this product is we at the office still feel like we're only scratching the surface of things that can be done with location, things that can be done within this game itself, and we're seeing a lot of really interesting kind of emergent gameplay coming out of people joining each other at safe houses, figuring out the game mechanics. So we have a lot of content planned for this game. It's not immediately obvious just from looking at the screenshots, but we actually have a whole background story for how this
how it happened.
This game came to be, and filled with backstabbing and government conspiracy. So we actually have a screenwriter who's helping us write a lot of our material, and the game is actually right now launched with Chapter 1. So it has 10 cinematic, what I call cinematic missions. So they're missions that are accompanied by really cool graphic novel cinematics.
Yep. I mean, the artwork on the beginning is great. I love that.
Yeah. So imagine stuff like that, but it continues through the game. So you're only at Chapter 1, and Chapter 1 lasts till level 20, and then we're building potentially 10 more chapters. That's our goal, 10 more chapters. each chapter containing not only more storyline and missions and characters, but also more zombies, more weapons,
More
and
upgrades.
gameplay.
Yeah.
We're going to add more mini games because right now a lot of people really enjoy the combat mini game that we have and the scavenging mini game, and we've got a lot more planned. So it's actually pretty exciting because we can just keep building on top of this thing. It's not, it's we feel like it's only 10% done.
Well, I want to ask this question, and then I think we should wrap up because I'm going to have you on for a fourth session because I'm dying to know what happens in 6 months, right? I mean, I think this is definitely an ongoing saga. But why games, right? So you look out at the spectrum of mobile, and you're thinking, listen. We've done a productivity tool. You look around. You've been working with customers who are engaging with you to help extend their business into the mobile space. So you're working with enterprise or brands, and you're trying to you're helping them figure it out. And it sounds somewhat cliche to go into games, right? Because I mean everybody's in games. So what was it about it? Why games?
Me and my brother have always been gamers, but that's not the only reason. I think games, as well as other parts of the entertainment industry, really do push technology. And I think the whole, I guess, the location-based services side of the business, you'll see every company now is building, not every company, but so many startups are building location-based startups and there's going to be a lot of them that will just, unfortunately crash and burn.
Yeah. Me too's.
They're just not engaging. There's not yet the killer app for that kind of activity. But games, I think, is where you will get people used to publishing their location, used to not caring that that they're telling the world that they're at that Starbucks or they're at that Loblaws or whatever. And I think after some point it just becomes second nature. And I think you're going to see a lot more startups. I saw this trend just starting up this summer, trying to gamify your entire life.
Yeah.
That's a pretty lofty goal. I'm not sure how easy it is to do that because you're asking people to create too much of that content. But it is a sign of where people are realizing that's the hook. That's how you get people interested in your stuff, is to provide those gaming hooks. So
why not just make a game?
Why not just make a game? And to be honest, we really actually like making games, and this has been the most challenging thing we've ever taken on. Like, of all the stuff I've ever built, I've never built anything this complicated or this challenging in design. Not just complexity in tech, but complexity in trying to convey these ideas and to have really new experiences for people to play with each other. And we're still exploring. So.
You know what? It strikes me as something that at first blush, people building games or people on the outside looking at game developers would think, well, it's simple. But with a productivity app, you have an understanding of what it should do. Like, if you're going to build a to-do application or a calendaring application, you know what it should do. Like, there are features in there that are similar or the same across all calendaring apps. But with a game, you're inventing a new world. You're inventing a new process. You're inventing new gameplay. You're inventing. So, I mean, you could probably get down 30 or 40 layers and get completely consumed by the world that you're building. And so I can understand the challenge there. Like, you're going down nooks and crannies, and you could hit dead ends and things that you never saw. It's a massive challenge.
Yeah, and
go crazy.
A game has to scale to a neighborhood where 10 people are playing to, say, a downtown San Francisco where maybe 5,000 people are playing within a certain neighborhood, and it has to work in both cases.
I love it. The complexity, like, man, yeah, it's not just left and right anymore. You're planing again, right? You're X and Y. You're playing on every axes when it comes to game development.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much for me. I just want to play the game.
We have to hire very, very smart people to tackle these problems.
That's exactly what it is.
Because I'm not the one. I'm not the one doing the most of. I'm helping with the design. I'm helping with ideas, but I've got much smarter people than me working to solve these crazy scale issues.
I love it. Well, you know what, Ken, I definitely want to have you back on in a shorter period of time, in 6 months, after you've launched in the U.S. and you've had some time to digest, more than the first 72 hours after the launch in the U.S., because I'd love to come back and see how things are rolling for you and what you've done and what you've found and the outcome of you know, all the hard work that you've done. I can't wait to see what happens for you guys.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a wild west right now. So,
well, I should give you one more final note. I'm not sure if it just came out this week, so we talked a little bit about nLoop.
Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know that we actually relaunched nLoop. So it's now called nLoop Mobile, and it's called that for very specific reasons. So we have a new CEO, Karen Person from an import from Vancouver.
Nice.
He's an amazing dude, and I think he's going to do really huge things with nLoop Mobile. Basically, they're doubling down. That team is doubling down on services.
Okay, so
just to loop back on what we were talking about earlier, where I didn't want to do services. Well, I have some very talented people that are really excited about doing that.
So service work, so clients, so basically what we're talking about, extending brands and building enterprise apps and everything like that for service for hire.
Absolutely, and they put together this ridiculously awesome team.
And how? Okay, so let's talk. How do people find out about nLoop Mobile, and what you're doing now?
I guess they can just Google nLoop Mobile, but if you just go to nloop.ca, that's still our old website. We're still trying to find some time to refine it, which is always a sad story with these kind of businesses. But we were in Tech Vibes recently regarding that announcement. So if you look up nLoop Mobile on Tech Vibes, you'll see the full announcement there. And
then if they want to play the game, they can find it on it's Massive Damage. It's not massivedamage.com though, is it?
No, it's not massivedamage.com. You can go to pleasestaycalm. .com, and you'll find the game there, or just look it up on the App Store. And
it's only available in Canada, unfortunately.
Yep.
And any ideas when you want to launch in the US?
Mid-October. So we're aiming for, I think, October 13th or so.
Okay, so it's not far off for you American viewers. I know there are lots of you out there.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I could put a freeze on time so I can figure out some more stuff before we launch. But I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, and the reviews have been great that have come in. From what I've seen on the App Store in Canada, you know, it's 4.5 stars or something along like that. So, yeah, you know, it's great. There's a trailer on at pleasestaycalm.com, and you'll see what we were talking about around the art. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of. I'll crank up the resolution for those who are watching it. I know that the video is a little choppy. But you know, it's just a lot of attention to detail, and the style of it is phenomenal. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we imported an amazing artist from Ottawa. Sorry, guys.
Well, who's the artist from Ottawa?
What's that?
What's the name of the artist?
Iapos.
Oh, good man.
He's from Ottawa, and we imported an iOS developer from Ottawa, and we imported another guy from Montreal. So it's the Toronto talent is really amazing, but it's getting really thin now with Zynga in town, Google, Facebook. Everybody's in town now. It's a battle.
So you have to start looking at the rural neighborhoods. There's some developer up in Yellowknife, I know, that's looking at this saying, I can do it, because that's where you're going to have to start recruiting from.
Yeah, and you know what? I have no complaints. Everybody we have on board is crazy brilliant in their own way.
I love it. Well, man, Ken, I can't. You know, I'm so glad that we could do this again. And again, 6 months is the longest that I'm gonna go with. I got a note here, 6 months.
Right.
And in fact, if I don't reach out to you, I'm gonna come down and visit you in Toronto and see how things are going. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you doing this. Congratulations on the pivot, on picking the direction and going with it. Congratulations on your funding. Honestly, I can't wait to see what happens with you guys going over the next 6 months.
Thank you very much.
That is it. I've been speaking with Ken Seto, who is the co-founder and CEO of Massive Damage Inc. Please Stay Calm is their first release, location-based game. It's only available in Canada, but if you're watching this after October of 2011, go and download it. If you're watching this in 2012, there's probably 10 chapters of this already. But I really appreciate, Ken, you coming on. Thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you are. We'll see you next time on Untether.tv.